The Nigerian Senate has dismissed Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's petition against Senate President Godswill Akpabio, citing procedural invalidity. Yesterday's Senate sitting was marked by intense debate as Akpoti-Uduaghan attempted to present a petition alleging sexual harassment. However, the Senate ruled that the petition was invalid since it was personally signed by her, contravening Senate rules.
The Senate Chief Whip emphasized the importance of adhering to rules, warning that deviating from them could lead to chaos. Despite Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan's arguments, the Senate upheld the rule. The dismissal has sparked mixed reactions amongst senators. Now, here's what we think you should know. The Senate's decision highlights the importance of following procedural rules, even in sensitive cases like this. The dismissal of the petition may not be the end of the matter, as Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan may explore other channels to pursue her allegations.
The petition is in my name against the President of the Nigerian Senate, His Excellency Senator Godswill Akpabio, for sexual harassment, abuse of office, and malicious obstruction of my legislative functions. You may recall, sir, that on Friday in Arise TV, I did make some statements, and I have decided to narrow these statements in a formal petition against the President of this Senate. So if it may please you, I would humbly step forward and lay this petition.
You may proceed. While I am aware that the matters are in court, however, I would like to state clearly that at no time did I ever attempt any sexual harassment on the said distinguished Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan or any other woman, for that matter. I and my siblings were raised very well by my late single mother. She died in year 2000, through very difficult times, and I therefore have the highest regards for women. I also wish to state that I also have 4 beautiful daughters.
Well, these are the happenings, that took place at the Senate. But to help us make sense of it all, we're joined by our guest, Abdul Mahmud, lawyer and public affairs analyst. Good morning. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Order 40 was the core of the conversation yesterday, as some of the objections raised were that, 1, it's sub judice, and 2, she signed the petition herself. She clarified the fact that it's not sub judice, as it's a different matter that is before the court. And now the issue is that she signed it herself. Are these rules strictly binding, or is this maybe some measure of mischief to avoid investigation being carried out?
Well, I'll approach your question one of 2 ways. One, procedurally, and 2, at the level of the substantive rules. But let me deal with the latter first. I've not seen that specific rule book of the Senate that has become a significant part of this whole saga. More specifically, Order 40. If Order 40 is couched in a permissive way, or it uses the word may, Uduaghan is allowed, to bring his petition before the Senate. But if Order 40, is couched in a mandatory way, that it uses the word shall, it becomes procedurally mandatory for Senator Akpoti to follow the procedures outlined by the rules of the Senate. But we are dealing with a sensitive matter here that is also criminal in nature. If I were Senator Akpoti, with the door shut against her by the leadership of the Senate, more particularly by a house that I described, or a chamber that I describe as a boys' club, I will approach 2 institutions. 1, the Nigerian Police Force. 2, the ICPC. Why do I say this? Sexual harassment is a criminal offense. If you look at Section 46 of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015, it deals with the whole business of sexual harassment. It talks about, conducts that are of sexual nature that tend to harass, intimidate, bully, or create fear in a work environment. The police, under Section 24 of the Police Act, can look at her petition. Two, she can also proceed and submit her petition before the ICPC. But let me express my shock here. The police and the ICPC do not have to wait for a petition to activate its powers. Why do I say this? 4 years ago, when a professor harassed a graduate student at Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, I think the professor is serving jail or has finished serving his jail term. The action taken by the ICPs was on the basis of what it read in our national papers. No petition was written to ICPC. So I'm surprised both institutions have not taken steps to call the parties, before them, to look at what is at play, which area of the law has been infringed upon here. Again, it deals with unequal power. It deals with a strangulatory patriarchal society, where structures of power are always, at the advantage of men. That's my prefatory remarks.
Now, Abdul Mahmud, you've raised several issues here, and like you rightly said, I mean, if you just look at the numbers, it's a boys' club, 109 senators out of 109, only 4 are women. Now, let's look at the power play and the power factor here. The Senate Disciplinary Committee says it only acts on referrals from the Senate, but in a system where the accuser is also the most powerful man in the chamber, can we really trust this process? And also, Akpabio is Senate President. How much of his influence will tilt the scales of justice? Do you think the ICPC, even though they know what they should do, and the Nigerian police would actually have the temerity to bring forth an investigation against the third most powerful citizen in the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
Well, nobody is more powerful than the Constitution. Nobody is more powerful than the nation state. But unfortunately, we're dealing with a patriarchal society where structures of power are always at the advantage of men. But the question you've asked, I want to answer it in one of two ways as well. One, if I were the Senate President, the proper thing I would have done to protect the moral character of the boys' club, of the Senate, and of the nation state, I would have stepped aside to allow for independent arbiter, which of course here is the Deputy Senate President, to oversee the proceedings. He has done that for reasons obvious to him. I do not know why. Two, the Ethics and Public Petitions Committee of the Senate, has also been implicated by this saga. The chairman of the committee, a senator from Edo South, Neda Emaswe, had made reckless remarks, in the course of this whole saga, that it implicates its own position. It does not show that he's an impartial arbiter in the whole saga. So it goes to the root of the matter that they will have a boys' club intent on protecting, the amoral character of the boys' club itself. A boys' club that is playing to the whistle, of its captain. But my worry, and this is the danger I point out all the time, the way members of the Senate are behaving, they are inevitably, destroying whatever is left, of the image, of the brand of the reputation, so to speak, of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You are right, we are dealing with the third citizen of our country, but it's no more powerful than our nation state. It's no more powerful than the Constitution that is sworn to protect. A serious allegation that is criminal in nature has been levied against them. What I expect the Nigerian police to do, this procedural police, is to send its men to the National Assembly or invite both parties.
But they have some level of immunity. Doesn't the Senate President have immunity against criminal?
He doesn't have immunity.
Okay, thank you for
clarifying. His immunity only exists around the precinct of the National Assembly under the legislative powers, legislative houses privileges, Privileges Act. He's only protected, to the extent that whatever he says within the precinct of the National Assembly cannot be held against them. But he does not have immunity. Don't forget, we have an electable way of doing things. This is a man, who has so many petitions against him on the basis of what he did in Akwa Ibom State. To protect himself in the most powerful way, as we know it in Nigeria, he sought and he got the position of the Senate of the President, the President of the Senate of Nigeria. So we have a way of creating immunity for ourselves. I'm surprised. This is another issue entirely. Mm-hmm. His successor in office is presently before the EFCC. I hear he has had 2 nights in the EFCC. I'm surprised why the predecessor of this successor is not before the EFCC. So we're dealing with powerful individuals here who appear to be more powerful than the nation state. And that is the danger that we'll continue to deal with every day of our life. But unfortunately for the Senate President, he has met a very doughty lady, a doughty fighter, who is ready to go the hall, with him on this specific issue. But like I always say, evidence is important here. Natasha has an evidence. It's only important that the institution of state, the ethics committee of the Senate should allow her, to explicate on her petition and present evidence before it. If it does not allow her, we also have institutions like ICPC and Nigerian Police Force under their acts, to act and do justice to a matter that is fundamental to the moral health of our state. This is the first time in a very long while that we have a high elected public servant accusing another public servant of sexual peccadillos. And so it behoves institutions of Nigerian state to look at this issue. The closest we had was in 1969 when a poor driver accused the secretary of the Benue state government at the time, Andrew Beya, of having sexual relationship with his wife. There's a distinction here. We're dealing with 2 unequal powers. One at the level of the Obeya or Bande case of 1969, a poor driver against secretary of a state government, and in 2025, we are dealing with 2 senators who are not equal, I must stress, because the patriarchal structure is always in existence, to the extent that he gives credence, he pursues those advantages that men enjoy in society. That is why I think there's this distinction between the 1969 Obande Obeya case and the now Akpabio Natasha sexual harassment saga.
Right, and I'm really glad you made reference to, when you were speaking earlier, the statement made by the chairman of the Ethics Committee when he did say that the petition was dead on arrival. Many have said that based on the fact that a party cannot be a judge in its own course, that Senator Godswill Akpabio should step aside pending the investigation. Unfortunately, it looks like there might not be any investigation happening with the Senate unless maybe there is a representation of this petition. So what are the options that are available to Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan? And do you think that Senator Godswill Akpabio should step aside like they are asking?
2 individuals must step aside. Senator Neda Maswa. And there's a Latin principle in a Latin axiom, a maxim in law, nemo judicium casasua. A man cannot be a judge in his own case. The Senate President has an allegation against her. He presides over the proceedings of the Senate. You know, he protects the moral health of the Senate. This allegation is against him. So he cannot sit and judge a matter that relates to him at one level. Two, Senator Neda has had his position as chairman of the Ethics Committee implicated by some of the reckless statements he has made. He cannot be an impartial arbiter in the hearing of any petition presented before his committee. So the solution here, I think the matter has resolved itself. Just yesterday morning, before the Buhari burst out, in the Senate of National Assembly, an interim order, an ex parte order was issued by a court in Abuja, stopping the Senate or its committee to look at all the issues that are before the Ethics Committee. The proper thing that the Senate should do, as an institution of the rule of law, of order, it should submit itself to the jurisdiction and adjudication of the court. That is at that level. Don't forget the issue before the court and the issue before the Ethics Committee deal with what happened last Monday in the Senate when Senator Natasha refused to take up a new seat. Then there is the criminal matter of sexual harassment on the basis of Section 46. And I also have to throw Section 360, I think, of the Criminal Code, which deals with sexual harassment. If you look at some of the testimonies, some of the positions of Natasha that are already in the public space, these harassments took place in Uyo in Akwa Ibom State. And if it is true that this harassment took place in Uyo, the reach of the criminal code, can also be used by the police to look at the matter. But if it took place in Abuja, Section 46 of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, an act that covers only the Federal Capital Territory, can also be used by the police to investigate the matter, and where there's evidence that sexual harassment are taking place, can proceed and file charges against the President of the Senate. But will the police get involved in this matter? Will the ICPC step in? I do not think so. If you look at the nature and character of our nation state, bullish, largely patriarchal, these institutions will be interested in protecting, the Senate President. No more, no less.
Okay. Now, Abdul Mahmud, just before we go, you wrote a piece on Senator Itagiwa's comments about the affairs, what's going on in the National Assembly and the Senator Natasha versus Senator Akpabio debacle. Now, what precedents does this set for women in politics if we have a former senator, a woman herself, and we also have Senator Ireti Kingibe in the Senate? Women, you talk about patriarchy, but we have women that don't seem to support their own. Senator Itagiwa said, when you become a senator, you've passed the level of sexual harassment. How do you react to statements such as that?
I'm pretty not concerned about the personal opinions of former senators Abiodun Olujimi, Florence Itagiwa, and a currently serving senator, Senator Ireti Kingibe. They have the rights to express themselves. But in expressing themselves, they should not distort truth. In expressing themselves, they should not turn what we know in the literature as issues that fundamentally touch on the woman as a gender, biological gender, and a social construct at a certain level, turn what we know on its head. You just re-echoed what Giwa told Arise Television, a sister station, a few days ago. It is not intellectually correct. In fact, it is flawed for anybody of Giwa's caliber to pose or frame the issue the way she did. The fact that Senator Natasha is a senator, Natasha is a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, does not shut the door or the window, of sexual harassment against her. That you become the president of Nigeria as a woman does not mean that the patriarchal structures of society cannot be used to intimidate you, cannot be used to humiliate you. And that is where I think that the remarks of Senator Giwa were flawed in the extreme. And I keep saying this, there is a problem with the elites of our country. And because they are ignorant,